Northern Lights, a look at Minnesota books and writers, is presented by the Minnesota Center for the Book, a program of the Minnesota Humanities Commission, with funding provided by Target Stores and the Elmer L. and Eleanor J. Anderson Foundation.
Hi, welcome to Northern Lights. I'm Pat Dennis, comedian and author, and I'm thrilled to be in the home of Susan Vass.
Hello, I'm thrilled to be in my home as well. I'm on the road so much, it's nice to be home.
It's good to have you here because we're talking about not only my books, but I'm thrilled to be talking about Susan's book and talking about comedy writing, humor writing in general.
We're just generally thrilled.
We're just happy.
We're happy to be here. And we're happy to have our books right here in gay profusion.
Susan's been one of my heroes for a long time with comedy writing. You have.
Thank
and I
you.
love your book. And writing humor is very difficult. It's very serious business. And I've always admired you on stage, and her book is Laughing Your Way to Good Health. And it's a rib-tickling look at the life guaranteed to make you feel better, and it does. And I love the way you can surprise me all the time with your writing.
Well, thank you very much. I was surprised as well when you met me for coffee and showed me the manuscript for Hotdish to Die For, also for Stand Up and Die. Pat's excellent books. Now these are real books, ladies and gentlemen. This is a slim volume of humor that my son calls my pamphlet, not my book. It's basically my act written down, and it's funny, and I'm proud of it, and it's fun to take along after a show. But here we're talking real writing here. This is an actual book where you had to put some effort into it here.
Well,
and make up a plot and everything.
I made up a plot, and it seems to work. You know, it makes sense who dies at the end and who dies at the beginning and who actually killed him. And the short stories, yeah, I did. I take my writing very seriously, but you also take your comedy very seriously. I respect you as a business person in comedy and as this author. It's not easy being funny, is it?
No, it isn't. Thank you. It's not easy being green, and it's not easy being funny. No. It's very hard, and it's not easy coming up with new material, which is why we say in our business that it's a lot easier to get a new audience than new material. So that's why we tour. But you had to actually sit down and how many hours would you say, or how many weeks, or what did it take you to write?
A year for each book.
Wow.
And I have a schedule, and I really found out that finally, you know, after years of writing or trying to write, or taking classes how to write, or taking classes how to convince yourself maybe you could write, you know, all of those things, I finally said every day, no matter what, 7 days a week, 2 hours, first thing in the morning. And I would do nothing else. I would get up, grab a cup of coffee that was already pre-made from the night before, kept in the thermos, went down to my basement, and I would write for 2 hours.
Wow, that's discipline.
Well, it was the only way to do it.
Yes.
Then I could have the rest of the day free. You're a writer, you know that. You have this guilt. If you're not working or if you're not performing, there's this little guilt. Well, once you perform or once you write, then you have this freedom.
That's true.
And I did. And at the end of the year, you have a book.
Wow.
You know,
and just 2 hours a day.
2 hours a day. And I find that's what most writers write, 2, 3 max. Your brain seems to be fried after that time.
I would think so. Yeah. You know, one thing that I think you do very well is dialogue. And I think that that's real hard to do. I mean, my favorite mystery writers, Elmore Leonard, Donald Westlake, they also combine humor and great plotting, but they talk like actual people talk. And I think that that's one of the big strengths of your book.
Thank you. I wanted to be a playwright forever. I mean, I had went to New York in my 30s, like many people, and ran home to get married. And I love dialogue because I love plays. I love theater. I also went to speech therapy for 8 years. And I still have to listen to how people speak sometime to remind myself how words should sound. And my enunciation is not the greatest. And I wonder if that didn't help, because I was always trying to
develop a good ear.
Yeah, what that sounded like. And so
that's great, because I've read, and it's certainly been my experience, and perhaps one of my own character defects is that people don't really listen. That what they do in a conversation is They're waiting for their chance to leap in, and they're thinking what they're going to say next, and they aren't really listening to what the other person says. But you must be doing some pretty good listening. Now, tell us about Hot Dish to Die For, which is a great title and a very attractive book. Now, did this not start from a short story, or what was the origin? How did this start?
Well, I love mysteries. I love short stories. And I love culinary mysteries where you write about food and something happens with the food, maybe to cause the death of someone. And I was just sitting there one day thinking, hot dish, I should combine them. I should put them together. And I had just done a entertain at some church basement where they had this huge buffet of hot dishes. Ooh. And I thought it's going to kill me. Yes. And somehow it all kind of clicked together.
Perfect. Well, you got to associate Minnesota and hot dish. I mean, I think we're just about the only state that actually calls it that.
We are. And in fact, well, you and I know this when you're entertaining. Sometimes you have to change things when you cross a border.
Yes.
And last Christmas, in 1999, I was entertaining in Hudson, Wisconsin, telling them about my book that was coming out. And out of 100 people in Hudson, Wisconsin, 70 of them knew what a hot dish was.
Oh.
The next night, I did a show in Baldwin, Wisconsin, 30 miles over. Only about 25 people knew.
Really? What, they call it casserole? Or
they call it a dish to pass.
Dish
Bring
to pass,
dish
a covered
pass,
dish, or a dish to pass.
Yeah. So hot
My
dish.
goodness.
You know, a hot dish is so Minnesota. And you grew up in Alexandria.
I grew up in Alexandria, Minnesota. We had plenty hot dish.
Yes, you did.
Lots of tuna casserole.
And one of the reasons we agreed to do this today was that we get to eat hot dish, because we're going to make a recipe from my book, and you're making a recipe from your life.
I'm making kugel, which is sort of a Jewish version of a hot dish. It's a noodle pudding. Oh, it's wonderful, full of all kinds of good things, raisins and cinnamon, and we have one waiting, and I'm going to whip up one on camera in very short order here, so boys and girls, stay tuned for that.
And it smells wonderful. I can smell it. So, now, how does kugel fit in with laughing your way to good health? Is it a very healthy dish?
Kugel is the dish that killed our ancestors.
Oh, is it?
Now there's, I make a slightly lighter version. I use lower fat cottage cheese and skim milk. You can use cream and butter and all those kinds of things. You can make it a little less fatty. And of course, portion control is the key here. If you just have a little bit of anything, what could it hurt, right?
Well, that's true. And like I've said about hot dish, with portion control, a standard size hot dish will feed a family of 4 or 1 if you're alone. So,
exactly.
You know, it kind of...
They always say it serves like 6 to 10, and you're wondering, what, anorexic midgets? Or, as you say, 1 if you're alone. Yeah.
One of the things I like about your writing is how you turn a phrase. Like at the end, I'm not expecting it. Your silliness also. I love, you use a phrase in your book called House of Large Petites.
Well, it's for people like us who are on the zoftig side and yet are short. Because a lot of petites they're either they're sized, you know, huge, so that they actually, because they expect you to be taller and thinner, or else if you buy something that fits your size, your height, then you have to hem everything. But the petites start at size 0 and go all the way up to size 2.
Oh.
Yeah, so for some of us, not to mention any names here at this table, for some of us, that isn't good enough. We need a house of large petites, or as my girlfriend Petra says, her size is Bubba.
Like that. House of Bubba. That could also...
House of Bubba.
House of Bubba.
That's right.
Now, do you think most of your writing comes out of your life?
Sure. I think almost all writing has an autobiographical element to it. Certainly my comedy comes from my life. I've bought a few pieces from people. Usually I don't even use them because they don't ring true to me, and even if they're funny at the time, they don't spring from my life, and I don't use it.
Yeah, I find that to be true too. There's something about it being organic that makes it your own, that you really feel more comfortable with it when you're out there. Because mine come from my life in a way. I mean, it's really fiction, and people are dying all over, and I'm not a serial killer at heart, but there's always something with each character that it's somebody I've known or I've seen or I've experienced. I have this wonderful Aunt Ovaline isn't that a wonderful name, Ovaline? I have this southern background.
Aunt Ovaline.
Aunt Ovaline.
Not Ovaltine.
No, not Ovaline. Yeah. Ovaline. And Aunt Ovaline is no longer with us.
I'm sorry.
Well, but she was this lovely woman, and I have this image of her. She was a large woman also. She probably weighed over 300 pounds. and she loved Chihuahuas. And so in my mind, I have this beautiful image of this woman, this beautiful large woman by the name of Ovaline with a little Chihuahua on her lap.
dog.
And I keep going, now that's a story. Now I don't know where that would take me, but that's such a lovely story.
There's things that you just have to work in
Yeah,
somehow.
you want to. It's a tribute, an honor kind of to her. And who do you like? Comedy writers are great. I mean, I love Maxine Jeffries. I think her act is so good.
Yes.
I think there's not she does sell her poems, so she sells poems.
That's right.
She doesn't
has
have a book
of
out.
poetry.
She has her book of poetry. And the thing I like about her act is that there's not an extra word.
Oh, beautiful editing
Isn't it?
and wonderful voice. Yeah, no, she's one of my favorites and a dear friend. Yeah, she's
And I
great.
also, Mary Hirsch, I love her. She has a new book out, I Wake Up Beautiful and Other Fantasies. It's
Very
a
cute
great
book.
columnist.
Yes, I bought that. She sent out the postcards to everyone she knew, as we all do. And
You do. Now, who do you like? Minnesota writers? Is there any particular
Well, I love
one,
Howard
or-
Moore. I think Howard Moore has a terrific voice. Just such an ear for Minnesota. His How to Talk Minnesotan, the long Minnesota goodbye at the end of How to Talk Minnesotan is so our family, where you say goodbye in the kitchen and then you decide to stay a couple of more hours and then you say goodbye on the inside of the screen door and then one on the outside and one on the inside and then in the driveway and leaning into the car window and then the big wave on the way. It's brilliant. It's genius. He's great. I like him a lot. I think Sue Grafton said, not a Minnesotan, but a mystery writer, said that I believe she started writing her mysteries after a divorce, and she said it was either kill her husband or write fantasy killing. And I love mysteries, and my husband Joe thinks that one of the reasons I like mysteries is because evil is very contained and good always wins. And that I like that. I don't like complex situations where the good guy doesn't always win. What makes you write murder?
It might be that same issue. It might be that same kind of, well, I don't know if we call it controlling issue, but where your universe makes sense.
Yes.
But the trend in mysteries is the good guy doesn't always win anymore, and often the hero is the bad guy, and so it's becoming a different ball game and maybe more of a realistic sense of writing with it. But I like knowing. I also like simple writing.
Yes.
I love wonderful writing like Ruth Rendell, who's my favorite mystery writer. She's very dark, very complex. But I also love Lillian Jackson Braun, because it's like, she's like a hot dish. It's reading her as you get under a comforter, you put in the electric blanket, you turn off your brain, and you read. And it's wonderful. It's all predictable, and it's absolutely wonderful. You love that predictability. You love no surprises.
That's right.
It's just there, and the characters are charming. Nothing's going to upset you. You can just read and fall asleep. And I have every one of her books. And so that's kind of like eating a hot dish, too, because you eat it and a lot, and you feel comforted, and eventually you fall asleep.
That's true. It has that L-tryptophan element in there. Ladies and gentlemen, buy our books and sleep well tonight. Shall we check on the hot dish?
I think that would be great.
Okay, we are going to go for a land speed record here on throwing this thing together. First of all, what I've already done is I've broken 3 eggs into this big bowl. And now I'm going to put in 2 cups of milk. I use skim milk. It would be richer, of course, with whole milk or 2%. You stir that up a little bit. Then a can of crushed pineapple with its juice. That also goes in. Right into the recycling bin goes that can. Then we have cottage cheese. You need 1 cup of cottage cheese. Got a little 1/4 cup measuring cup here. It doesn't have to be too exact. 1, 2, 3, 4. As I said, we're going for speed here rather than accuracy. Did it really bug you when you were trying to watch your grandma cook and she'd never measure anything and her stuff always turned out great and you just had to watch her kind of do it? 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Kaboom, kaboom. Or bam, as Emerald would say. 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. I like cinnamon a little more than that, so I use about a teaspoon. Though the recipe calls for 1/2 teaspoon. That can be to your taste. Okay, about a half a cup of sugar, and that would be 6 tablespoons. I'm going to just use 4. We try to make this not quite as sweet as it could be. So about a half a cup of sugar. Pat, could you get me the butter that's off the stove there? Bring that over here. That's a stick of melted butter. Thank you, dear. We're going to pour in almost all of it, and then we're going to put just a little bit of the rest of it on the top of the corn flakes. Okay, what am I missing here? The raisins. Just a good handful of raisins. I like the golden ones. And now the exciting part. Most kugels have cooked noodles. The great part of this is that you don't have to cook them first. Now here's where it takes 8 ounces of noodles, and ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have 12 ounces here. So we're gonna have to remember our algebra now. It is not true that you never need algebra again. So we need 8/12 of this package, which is 2/3. So we're just gonna kind of ballpark what 2/3 of this package is. Again, it's not gonna be critical. And just throw them in uncooked. Close enough, don't you think? Yeah. As you and your Pat, who's also a wonderful singer, I first met her when my husband took a jazz class. We used to say in jazz, close enough for jazz. So that's close enough of 2/3 of a cup. And now I already have my little pan all set up. Wasn't that a fast thing? The one real important thing is that all the noodles be submerged in the liquid, because otherwise they get too crunchy. So what we have to do now is sort of smush them. This is a technical cooking term, smush. Going to smush them down and press them under the liquid. And then we're going to throw some handfuls of corn flakes on top. This is actually quite a healthy dish in that it has a lot of calcium, and women can always use a lot of calcium. Here we have total corn flakes, which contain 100% calcium. So we're going to throw some handfuls of those on top. Ooh, yum, yum, yum. And then I'm going to make sure that it extends here to the borders. And we're going to, just to make it a tiny bit richer, because it's just not rich enough, we're going to sprinkle a little sugar and cinnamon on the top of this. Teeny bit here. There we go. And then we're going to pour the remainder of our butter on the top. And there it is. There's our kugel, and we're going to bake this for 1 hour at 350 degrees. Marguerite, I guarantee. Okie dokie. Kugel for a brunch to go with fish. A lovely dish. So we're cutting this kugel here. We're remembering portion control, and we're going to make, as I said, a kugel is a nice little noodle pudding. There's the second one. Alrighty. So I'm going to take this back, and we're all going to have a piece of kugel. Pat, some kugel.
Oh,
I make this fairly often. It makes a nice brunch dish. We have it sometimes on Sunday morning. It makes a nice accompaniment to fish. Now, we really shouldn't be photographed eating. You know, Queen Elizabeth does not allow herself to be photographed eating, and I think that that's a fine policy. So let's just have one bite, and then we'll turn the camera off and just finish it.
okay,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
All right, here we go. Okay. Mmm.
I have one more.
Here I am in Susan's kitchen, and she's allowing me to make this lovely hot dish, tuna noodle hot dish, or as we call it in the book, Lutheran soul food. Now, you said your mom made tuna noodle growing up?
Yes.
So you're used to this kind of a hot dish.
Yes.
It's so simple to make, and that's what I love about hot dish. It doesn't take a lot of skill. The only skill it really takes is opening the can of soup. And actually, I'm pretty good at doing that. And that's it. This is your basic tool, a can opener. And that's why we all love hot dish. Something quick and easy. Now, with this particular recipe, you just use noodles, but unlike the kugel, you boil them first, put them in your dish, drain, of course, the water out of them. I'm using about 1.5 cups of noodles cooked. Cover it with the small can of milk, evaporated milk. You chop up an onion, throw it in there. You can do it daintily or throw it doesn't really matter. Then you buy the cheapest kind of tuna you can, I would say. You can try the fancy stuff, but if you want that real hot dish flavor, 69 cents or less is usually what you want. And if they're dented, that's just as good. Throw that in, and you mix it all up. Then you add your cheese. Now, we prefer a slice of Velveeta, because if you don't particularly want to use it up that day, it actually will go for 3 or 4 years on the expiration date.
And Velveeta has wonderful melting properties.
It does.
Unlike other cheeses.
You slice a little thinner than this, but I was kind of in a hurry to show you how it could be made in, a minute or less, I would say.
Yeah.
And you just smashing it all together nicely. Then you add your milk. And once again, not your milk, excuse me, your mushroom soup, cream of mushroom soup. How dare I make a mistake, because this is really sacred in Minnesota. Get it all in there. Just keep smooshing it around. That was your term, your technical term, wasn't it?
Squooshing, I believe. Squooshing and smooshing are both good verbs.
The nice thing about this dish, because the noodles are pre-cooked, and this really is a good dish, it's a really tasty dish, you can actually cook it in 15 minutes or less. So it's taken me about a minute to put most of the ingredients in it. The next thing I have to do is grab the potato chips and a big bag. You want the biggest bag you can find. You're only going to use a cup for the actual dish, but you never know what you might want to chew on while you're making the dish. And this gives us this nice crunch. That's what I liked about your kugel. It has that nice corn crunch. Of course, cornflakes are a little bit healthier than potato chips. You smash this. You just keep breaking the potato chips till you get almost a full cup. Just keep breaking them. You can use your hand. You can smash it down with a spoon, whatever. Spoon. Cover the top. We're going to put it in the oven. We're going to bake it for 15 minutes, and we'll have tuna noodle hot dish. Okay, here we go. And don't forget to cover it. But the last couple minutes, take it out so the potato chips brown. Can I use your stove?
Please. It's
Thank
already
you.
at 350. So
Okay.
just slide that right under the kugel.
Okay. There we go. I'd like to read from Hot Dish to Die For. This is not one of the short stories, but it's part of the introduction to what a hot dish is. It's from the unofficial guide to hot dish. In the heartland, we and we alone revere something called hot dish. For those who are not familiar with hot dish, well, the rest of the civilized world, it is an entree whose origins are canned soup, canned vegetables, white rice, and a scattering of I-got-it-on-sale meat. The dish is cooked in oven-proof bakeware and served while hot. Not a lot of brain power was used in coming up with the name hot dish. My work as a comedian and mystery writer has led me to eat hot dish in Lutheran church basements, Catholic universities, and at family reunions. I have eaten it in the homes of the poor, the wealthy, and the intellectually elite. I have discovered that even holding a PhD cannot protect a Heartlander from having an uncontrollable urge to serve guests ground hamburger and white rice that is gaily covered in tater tots and then drenched in canned cream soup and baked until every possible drop of moisture is sucked out.
Well, we've talked a lot about food, which is a subject dear to the hearts of both Pat and myself. And so it naturally follows that dieting is next. How do I pick a diet? I'm going to read from Laughing Your Way to Good Health, my little humor pamphlet. How do I pick a diet? This is very difficult. What with the macrobiotic diet, the beer and chip diet, the low carbohydrate, high protein diet, the high carbohydrate, low protein diet, the Fig Newton watercress diet, the Isaac Newton apple diet, the Newton Minnow bad TV diet, and anorexia, to name just a few. Let's examine two of the major contenders. The water diet. All diets say drink 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. This is to give you the illusion of fullness, to give you something to do with your mouth periodically in lieu of stuffing it, and as a side benefit to fill up your ankles. The water diet just takes that concept to its logical extreme. You must drink 8 to 10 quarts of water a day. This one works best if you're not planning to be away from your bathroom for over 15 minutes at a stretch. The Scarsdale diet. This one just sounds so upscale, you know it has to work. Think of all those chic people who can't be too rich or too thin. They must know what they're doing, right? The diet just wouldn't have the same panache if it were the Cleveland diet or the Minneapolis diet. Minneapolis correctly conjures up images of sturdy blonde Scandinavians eating bland yet caloric food. A Minnesotan is not troubled by boring cuisine. In fact, a meal of plain boiled potatoes, boiled cauliflower, boiled cod in white sauce, and tapioca pudding with whipped non-dairy topping is considered close to ideal, as its color best approximates the frozen landscape we enjoy for up to 7 months of the year. A sprig of parsley tossed whimsically upon this sea of white is considered entirely too festive, although among some Lutheran sects it is thought to be a lucky foreshadowing of spring. It is not true that the Scarsdale diet entails shooting your unfaithful lover and then losing weight by eating prison food.
Do you have any advice you'd give to somebody who wants to be a humor writer?
Give up. It's a hard job, and it's a lonely job, and that's why it's wonderful to have a support group like your writers group, because it's just you and the thesaurus and the typewriter or the word processor, and it's a lonely business.
It is, but you know, it's worth it. For me, I love my characters. They become my friends, actually. I mean, by the end of the book or by the end of a short story, I could tell you how they would react in almost every kind of a situation.
I'm sure. Well, I'm very fond of Manny Grant. Are we going to hear from her again?
Yes, I have another. I'm going to finish a thriller I'm working on right now, and then after that, I'm going to do another Manny Grant.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a lot of fun, and right here in my own home, and thanks a lot for inviting me to be on this with you. You're the one with the real legitimate book here. Thanks to Northern Lights and Dave, and have a wonderful holiday season. Have a lot of hot dish, and try not to die.
Well, Susan, I think the kugel is still cooking.
The kugel's still baking.
Still baking. However, we have that tuna noodle hot dish.
Okay.
And would you like to give it a sample? Let's try it.
Pat?
Yeah?
The last time you served that, didn't someone die?
Well, they only die in the book.
Are you sure?
No. Well, I guess we won't be having it today. Some other time?
Yes, okay. Let's freeze that.
Okay.
It freezes well.
Northern Lights, a look at Minnesota books and writers, is presented by the Minnesota Center for the Book, a program of the Minnesota Humanities Commission, with funding provided by Target Stores and the Elmer L. and Eleanor J. Anderson Foundation.